Hi, everybody. Welcome to Diamond Secrets Revealed, the secret to sparkle. So today we're going to be talking about the cut of the diamond and why it is so important. My name is Jennifer Wyszynski. I am a GIA gemologist, jewelry designer, and appraiser, and I love to talk and teach all about the different gemstones, especially diamond. So I want to ask you, have you ever wondered why the cut of the diamond is so important and why a better cut diamond will cost so much more? Well, the cut is what unlocks the magic of diamond's powers of brilliance, scintillation, dispersion, and light pattern. So basically, it is the secret of why one diamond will have more sparkle and life than another. So cut is man's contribution to the beauty of diamonds, with the ideal goal of having a perfect balance of brilliance, scintillation, dispersion, and light pattern. So brilliance is the white light reflected from the surface of the diamond. This is mainly from the table facet, which is the largest facet on the top. So when white light hits your diamond, the white light is reflected back to your eye. Then you have scintillation, which is the sparkle you get when you or the diamond moves. Then you have dispersion, and this is the fire of the diamond, creating rainbow colored flashes. And this is mainly created by the crown facets on brilliant cuts. So they have these triangular and kite-shaped facets on the top of the stone that surround the table and create these rainbow colors. So you can see from this picture here, you have the red arrows representing the brilliance or that white light return. Then you have those rainbow flashes coming from the crown of your diamond. And then if you or the diamond move, you have that scintillation or that sparkle. And lastly, there's light pattern, which is the relative size, arrangement, and contrast of bright and dark areas that result from a diamond's internal and external reflections. So there must be enough contrast and balance between the bright or white reflections and the dark areas or the black refractions to give a pattern of crisp, sharp looking light and dark areas, so there are no complete dark areas or complete light areas. You have something that's well balanced and even. So if you look at this picture, you have more of an excellent stone in the center, which has this nice balance of light and dark. Then to the right and the left, you have a stone that is lighter, so it's really cut more shallow and looks a little bit more watery. And then you have one that has too many dark reflections, and this is usually from a diamond that is cut too deep. So you want something that has a nice, even balance of light and dark, something that's symmetrical. And this is really why cut is so important, so you have that symmetry of reflections and sparkle and brilliance and that beautiful dispersion and rainbow colors. So if cut is so important, why aren't diamonds just cut the same? Throughout history, there was a lack of knowledge about what caused diamonds' unique optical properties, and they didn't have the proper tools and technology. So this is why the older cuts are so bulky and they're usually poorly cut. And as time went on and faceting improved, retaining the most weight from a rough diamond was the most important consideration, and this was highly dependent on the size and shape of the rough crystal. So if the crystal was a perfect octahedron, which is two pyramids stacked on top of each other, like this picture here, it would be split into two to make two round diamonds, one larger and one smaller, and this is to maximize the rough diamond. So it's so not to waste any of that rough. They want to create the largest stones possible. So if the rough was a little bit flatter, they would generally cut pear or marquise or trillion shapes that are typically more shallow in nature. So the shape of the rough diamond dictated what was to be cut from it and to retain the most weight possible. As technology and knowledge advanced and diamond optics were studied more and more, the creation of the ideal cut emerged. So the ideal cut uses scientific calculations of angles and proportions to create the maximum brilliance and dispersion. So the maximum amount of white light, sparkle, and those rainbow colors that you want to see when looking at your stone face up, because this is how we see our stone. You want all of that light returned back to your eye. So scientists studied how these different angles and proportions affected how much light was returned. Every gemstone, whether it's colored stones or diamonds, they have what's called a critical angle. And this is the secret to your sparkle. So the critical angle is a maximum internal angle, creating an invisible cone which is perpendicular to the surface. I'll show you a picture here. So you can see that perpendicular line, which is your normal, and a diamond has a critical angle of 24.5 degrees. So that's right and left of the perpendicular line, and this creates a cone. So basically, it's like a window. So if light hits inside that cone or inside that window, it leaks out and you have no sparkle. If it hits outside the cone, it reflects to another surface, and with the right proportions, back up to your eye, and you get a beautiful sparkling diamond. Since diamonds has a smaller critical angle than other colorless gemstones, you don't have that see-through effect caused by too much light leakage. So you have that light coming back to your eye and creating that sparkle. So stones like quartz, colorless topaz, and others that we talked about when learning about diamond simulants and how to tell the difference, these have larger critical angles, and you'll be able to see right through them because there's a lot more light leakage. So the bigger the window is, the more light that's going to leak out. So to answer the question, why don't they just cut all these diamonds to the same proportions, since they figured out how to get the most beauty and sparkle, is that it always comes down to money. So since diamonds are rare, and it's even rarer to find larger diamonds of quality, the more of the diamond you cut away, the more money is going down the drain, and you're getting a smaller stone and using less of that rough diamond. So while a diamond is cut from the rough through this cutting process, you lose about 50% of that rough to cut a diamond. So when you're cutting it to more of these excellent or ideal proportions, you're losing more of that rough. So you're probably losing around 60 to 70%. So you get a smaller stone, and this means less money to the person cutting the stone, but it means more money for you because you're paying for this loss and you're paying for these ideal optics for cutting it to these proportions. So what goes into consideration when judging the cut? So the cut grade looks at the diamond's proportions, which are its measurements and angles, its finish, which is how well the diamond is polished, and its make or symmetry, which is how symmetrical the facet arrangements is cut as a pattern on the particular shape. So rounds, princess, pears, all the different shapes have pretty much a standard pattern of facet arrangement, unless it's a branded stone. And then they also have their own branded pattern that they want to put the facets on that stone. So for proportions, there is machinery now that uses lasers to get the exact measurements and angles. So here's a picture of a diamond showing all the different measurements and elements that make up the diamond's proportion. And that is the girdle outline or the face-up shape. So what shape is it? Is it round? Is it marquise? Is it princess? Then the table size, that is the flat facet on the top, and it's the largest facet that there is on the diamond. And this is expressed as a percentage of the overall diameter if it's round, or width if it's a fancy shape. Then you have the crown height, which is the top of the diamond, and the crown angle, which is the angle between the girdle and the bezel facet of the crown. Then you have girdle thickness, then pavilion depth, which is the bottom half of your diamond. So that's represented as a percentage, and also an angle between the girdle and the pavilion main. Then you have total depth, so the measurement between the top and the bottom, and that's represented as a percentage of the diameter. Then the culet size, if there is one. A lot of times they don't cut a culet anymore. It's usually left at a point. So it can have no culet. So the culet would be if they faceted that point, and then they determine what size that is. And for fancy shapes, they look at the length to width ratio, which are more of a preferred measurement. There's no real ideal for fancy shape. So in today's grading of proportions, the pavilion angle, or that bottom angle, is a key factor to light return back to your eye. So each of these factors are not set in stone as ideal. There's a range and many combinations that will yield optical light return, which through extensive studies created GIA's parameters for each cut grade. So each of these elements do not have one singular percentage or angle. There's more of a range. For the finish or the polish, this is determined by a diamond grader who physically looks to see if there are any blemishes like scratches, polish lines, nicks, etc., which look like this. So this shows some polish lines and abrasions. So what they do is they look at the overall surface condition and judge whether it is excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor. So if there are many blemishes or polish marks, it will really affect the shine and sometimes translucency of your diamond, so how much light can go through it. So it's like having an unwashed or dirty window. It makes it much harder to see inside and really affects the sparkle. So the make or symmetry looks at how even or symmetrical the stone is when you visually cut it in half or in quarters, and how neatly the facets are arranged. So when you're looking at the stone, you kind of imagine a line cutting it in half, cutting it in quarters, and you want to make sure there's no gaps in between the facets and that they're perfectly shaped. So the main elements of a diamond grader looks at are the table, to see if the table or the culet is off center. So maybe one is shifted toward one side or the other. Then they look at the girdle outline to see if it's out of round. So some diamonds aren't perfectly round. They kind of a little bit bulkier on one side or another. And this can happen also with your fancy shapes. One side can be a little bit heavier than the other. Then they look at the table or girdle, not parallel. So one might be tilted and not be completely parallel with one another. Then you have a wavy girdle facet, which can undulate or go up and down instead of just straight across. Then they look at the facets and whether they have a nice crisp point to it. or not, or if it's rounded, or if it comes to a line, then that is more of a fair or a poor grade. You want them to be nice, crisp, faceted, crisp points to your facets. Then you have misaligned crown or pavilion facets. So this is the top and the bottom facets. You want them to meet perfectly. So sometimes they're shifted and the crown and the pavilion facets don't meet. So you really don't want that. Then they look at the table to see if it's a perfect octagon, if it looks like that stop sign, or if it's misshapen. And then the other facets, if they're misshapen. Then naturals, if there's some of the skin left on your diamond. And lastly, they look to see if there's extra facets. And these are facets just put on arbitrarily, and it isn't part of the intended facet arrangement. And for fancies, you'll cut it in half visually and look for any kind of unevenness. If there's flatness or bulging, you want it to come more to a nice V shape and not have any of that extra weight. As well as the other factors, the misshapen facets, if the table or culet are off center, and things like that. So again, this is graded as excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. So the symmetry is important to the balance of light and how evenly it is displayed. So how does the GIA laboratory grade cut? Well, in determining a cut grade for standard round brilliant cuts in the D to Z color range, and this is important to distinguish that this is for the D to Z color range, because once you get into fancy colors, or even colored stones when they have color, usually the cut isn't as important because it is cut to save the amount of color. Sometimes you need a bulkier or deeper stone for that color to be more saturated, to be shown as a brighter color or more or a deeper color. So this cut grade is for D to Z color range, so the near colorless to the light yellow stones. So GIA takes into account 7 components, and this is how well the diamond interacts with light, so its brightness or brilliance, or how white light reflects from the diamond, its fire, or the scattering of white light into all the rainbow colors, so that dispersion, its scintillation, or the pattern of light and dark areas caused by reflections within the diamond, so that sparkle. And then how well the diamond is designed, faceted, and crafted. And this is man's contribution. So they look at the diamond's weight relative to its diameter. So you don't want it too shallow or too deep, because both of these will give negative optical effects. Then they look at the diamond's girdle thickness, which can really affect the durability of the diamond. Because if it's too thin, this is called a knife edge, and it can chip easier because you don't have any cushioning. If it's too thick, it adds weight without adding any beauty. The symmetry of the diamond's facet arrangement, including the angles and relative positions of all the facets, making sure it creates that even pattern. And then lastly, they look at the quality of the polish on the facets. So together, these factors determine a diamond's overall cut grade, ranging from excellent to poor. So the cut grading system is based on a combination of computer modeling, so of a diamond's appearance, predictive metrics, and observations of the appearance of actual diamonds to create the ranges for the 5 cut grades, which again are excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. So based on these studies, each cut grade has its own parameters, and the diamond's proportions are measured using highly accurate laser-based machinery with the parameters for each grade programmed into it. So using these parameters, the machine evaluates the results and gives the final cut grade. And the grade is set by the lowest assessment the diamond receives for the 5 of the 7 components. In other words, if a diamond receives a poor grade for brightness, then the highest overall cut grade can be poor. The exceptions are polish and symmetry. These are assessed and graded separately using standard GIA grading methodology by a trained gemologist. A diamond with very good polish and very good symmetry, for example, these can still get an excellent cut grade. So the polish and symmetry are graded separately than the proportions, the scintillation, the sparkle, and the dispersion. So when you see a GIA certificate, you'll have cut, polish, and symmetry all graded independently from each other. So how do you choose what diamond's right for you? So if there's a choice between a bigger diamond with good or fair cut grade or a smaller stone with very good or excellent cut grade, I would definitely advise the one with a better cut grade. The main reason why diamonds are so prized are for their beauty, and it's the cut that reveals its true potential. So it's very important in this category, in this cut category, to have a certificate from a lab like GIA or AGS, where they examine the proportions using high level machinery, and they examine these proportions to yield the maximum light, giving a grade of excellent or ideal. So if a diamond doesn't have a certificate, let me give you some tips on what to look for. So you want to look closely at the balance of light and dark areas and how much it sparkles. So here's a picture of a beautiful, ideal, round, brilliant, and you can see those dark areas that are very even. They look like arrows. You know, you've heard of hearts and arrows. So this is what perfect arrows would look like. And they're very symmetrical, very even, very pointed, and you have that nice balance of light and dark. So you always want to compare a couple of diamonds and one versus another to see which shines more in your eyes, and ask to look at it in the natural daylight or in sunlight, because all diamonds will look very sparkly under the jeweler's light. So to get more of a realistic idea of the sparkle and dispersion, you want something in natural daylight or sunlight. Even if it's cloudy, that's okay, because this is how you're going to be looking at your stone anyway, right? You're not going to be in a jewelry store all day. So you want to look at the table or that flat facet on the top. And the smaller the table is, the more rainbow colors you'll have from that crown area. So the table will give you those white reflections, and the crown area will give you those rainbow reflections. So if you have a table that's in, say, the 55 to 60 range, something like that, it will give you a nice balance of that brilliance and rainbow dispersion. You want to look at the stone from the side. So you don't want to have a girdle that's too thick or too thin, because too thin, like I said before, can be a durability factor, and too thick can add a lot of weight without adding any beauty. And you also want to look at that crown area, so that top area. So you don't want it to be too flat or too bulky. So this will also give it negative optical effects. But the final call is really up to you. Since beauty is in the eye of the beholder, you know, everybody finds something more beautiful than somebody else does. So it's really what you find attractive and beautiful, because it's your stone to treasure. And lastly, what I need you to remember is that no matter how excellent or ideal the cut is, so you're spending all this money on an excellent or ideal cut, you want to keep your diamond clean. Because if you don't have your diamond cleaned, then you won't see this amazing sparkle and dispersion. It will be like cloudy and dirty, and you won't let that beautiful light out. So remember to always keep it clean. You know, like I showed you before, clean it at home, bring it to a jewelry store, something like that, to keep it nice and sparkling. So if you have any questions about cut or about diamonds or any other gemstones, I am so happy to help you. You can put it in the comments section and I'll definitely answer any questions that you have. Or if you need help with any of your diamond or gemstone needs, I am here for you. So next time we are going to be talking about the diamond's fluorescence. So we're going to be unveiling the mystery of why a diamond fluoresces, and if you should be concerned, and how it affects your diamond. So I hope you all have a beautiful Sunday, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.